Hey, it's Dre. I want to welcome you to another mindset moment. I do enjoy our time together. Today, I wanted to talk about making sure that you guard your mind, right? The things that you are taking in, the impact that that has on the actions that you take, and just making sure that you are taking those proper steps. All right, like if you really think about the world that we live in and how we interact with it, a lot of what you perceive to be reality is based off of past experiences, things in your environment, things that you've seen and you've done. And then over time, you've said, okay, this is what I can expect. This is how I'm going to make these decisions. Right? There's lots of stories out there that where people have had a certain belief and it has hindered their ability. But then when they push through it, everybody else is able to do it too. And so there's lots of examples of this. The most common one that you'll read about is that the 4 Minute Mile story, where at the time people said literally if you are able to run a mile in under 4 minutes, like parts of your organs will explode, right? Like it is going to be so difficult for the body to survive such an experience that how dare you even think of trying to do it? And then the year you run the 4 minute mile within the so right, so it's been like thousands of years, no one ever did it, or at least it wasn't reported. And then what happens? Then in the next few years, it happens like 30 times, right? Where people are like, oh, you can do that. Oh, okay. I thought like, something bad would happen. So I subconsciously was holding myself back, right? That's really what they're saying. Whatever the words they use, they're really saying I was holding myself back. And sometimes we make that thought where we don't know that we're doing it. We don't know that what we're actually doing is holding ourselves back because we have learned that if we go any further that we may risk injury. And we've learned these traits, and not always physical, sometimes mental, sometimes relationship. Whatever the injury is, we believe that something negative is going to happen if we keep going. So we have decided that we're going to kind of not create any waves. We're going to kind of stay under the radar. We're going to just kind of go along to get along, and we're going to see how that treats us, and hopefully we don't ruffle any feathers and everything will be okay. But as you've probably experienced, that is not really living. Right? Like that's not that's not a life that anyone would want to live, but we're creating these prisons for ourselves, and then we have the society where people are miserable on Mondays, they're excited about Fridays, and then they have 2 days to figure out what they want to do, and then they go back to being miserable on Monday. And whether that is specifically in your job or whether that is in a relationship, if that's whatever that is, you really have to understand that you were creating that prison. You have the ability to free yourself at any moment. And so when you're talking about how do I rise to that challenge? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to start changing the information that we allow ourselves to receive. And if you think about any advertising on any channel, you'll notice that the advertising is very specific to that channel. And what that means to you is they understand that if you are watching this information on this channel, then that means you should have this belief. Now think about that for a second. The idea that if I'm watching a sports channel, so I'm watching like ESPN or a sporting event, then beer companies know that that makes it a high chance that I would want a beer if I'm watching the game. And it's not to say it's 100% of the time, but it's just to say that they understand that there is a connection, that if someone is thinking sports, and they're probably thinking friends, and then they may be thinking relaxing, and then they may be thinking beer or something like that. And it's just linked together. So you find those commercials are often on the sports channels. And you'll find that that's also true if you're on like a travel channel where people are looking at cruises and things like that, that you'll find cruise commercials. You'll find vacation commercials where they're talking about resorts and talking about eating, and they're talking about seeing these beautiful places and travel agents and all that stuff, because they understand you're not going to find a resort or even a travel commercial or even the beer commercial. You're not going to find that on like a kids station, because they understand that these kids most likely aren't looking for those commercials. What do you find on the kids station? You find lots and lots of toys, right? I have 4 girls, so believe me when I tell you, lots of toys. Where every commercial, they're like, oh, Dad, I want that. Oh, Dad, I didn't know that was there. Oh, Dad, can we get that? because they understand that that's what these kids are looking for. They're looking for stuff. And they find that, oh my goodness, look how much fun these kids are having when they're watching that. I want that too. But that's not really how it should work. But that's where we're taught from a very young age, where happiness is outside of you. And you'll find that even when you look at like car commercials, that they rarely talk about the features and the things of the car unless it's like an economical car, right? Where they're not selling any sort of a lifestyle. What they're selling is peace of mind, safety ratings, 5-star ratings, and price, right? So you find that the lower end vehicles, that's often what they're going for, because that's what people are making their decisions off of. But on the higher end car, I mean, at the end of the day, it's steel with 4 wheels, and some have leather seats and things like that. So how do you convince someone to pay 2, 3, 4, 5 times the price for something that gets you from point A to point B? Well, they start selling the experience, right? It is a luxury vehicle. This is a different thinker vehicle. This is a prestigious vehicle. This means you're successful, right? And then you look at the driver and they're just looking and they're just smiling. Everybody looks all happy. And you're like, yeah, like I think I would be happy if I had a vehicle like that. Or, yeah, I feel like I'm missing that in my life. And I do like to feel like I have arrived, that I'm successful. So you find that these vehicles and these different commercials, that they understand us a little bit better than we understand ourselves. And I'll fault us for that, right? We can spend some time figuring out the same information that they use to create very successful commercials. We can use that same information to create plans for our own life, right? When we recognize some of these commercials on these channels, we can say, okay, what would someone who would buy that be thinking? What would someone who would buy that be interested in? And why would they be interested in that? Am I interested in that? And what is missing in my life, and what could I change about my life so that I can have that looking internally and not quite needing this external validation? And a part of that, if you notice, like a lot of vehicles, especially when you get into the luxury ones, they change the model, the way it's designed, ever so slightly every handful of years, because they understand that people are looking for a certain status with that vehicle. So if you know something about that vehicle, then you would know that the person has an older model. And if you bought the vehicle for that purpose, then people knowing you have an older model, that doesn't really benefit you as much as people knowing that you have the brand new one. And we laugh when we think about it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's true. And so you really have to understand, like when you're absorbing information, that it says something about us, the way we interact with it, something about our inner beliefs and things like that. So you really want to see, when you're watching this stuff, when you're paying attention to it, I would almost think of it like kind of like lucid dreaming. And that's the idea that you're really paying attention to your dreams, where you're almost like you know you're dreaming. I mean, that's neither here nor there. That's like way down the road. But it's the idea that if I'm watching, if I'm experiencing this television, if I'm experiencing these commercials, this movie, this show, what does it say about me? And am I okay with that? Is that something that I can address on my own? So if you were to watch a news program, you'll find that I won't mention it in particular, but there's one out there where it's every time you're watching the program, they're talking about how awful everything is. And so the commercials, naturally, they're selling gold. And if you understand anything about like money and finance and things like that, when you're investing in gold, you're trying to hedge against this idea that, well, gold is going to be here before, it's going to be here after certain governments. So if things are looking really bad, i.e. inflation and economic collapse and things like that, gold is something that you can hold on to. It's going to go up in value. So they understand, if you have this negative perception of the world, of the economy, of your country, of your president, whatever, then you would be someone that would need a little more security in their life. So they sell gold on their commercials, right? That's not a difficult concept. And often, if you just tell me what you watch, if you just tell me a couple shows that you watch, I can tell you something about yourself. And it's not that like some psychic or something amazing. It's just that if you allow certain information to be absorbed within your mind, that it is going to change the way that you interact with the world. Right? That's just an absolute truth. I know some of us say, oh, I just watch it for fun, but I'm totally cool with this. Like, I don't believe all the stuff that I watch. I hear you. But if you're watching it, and these people doing their ads, they spend millions of dollars understanding what someone would believe if they watched this show. And they seem to be doing pretty good. They're not running out of money. So you would either have to ask yourself, am I positive? Like, am I some exception? Am I able to absorb this information? It has no impact on me, or maybe I'm not completely aware that it is slowly drifting and changing my thought process, my mindset, and my interactions with the world. Now, I have discussions with people all the time. I have, like, recently that Harriet Tubman movie came out, and I did not go. And I understand, right? Like, well, Dre, it's a celebratory story. You should feel really good about it. It shows blacks kind of working and making things happen, and I get all that. But at the end of the day, that is a story about a black in slavery. And so I don't watch any slave movies because mentally that puts you in the mindset of being a slave, right? Like, if you watch any movie, you're automatically going to be thinking, if I was in that situation, what would I do? And if you put yourself in her situation, then you have made yourself mentally a slave. So I don't partake in any of those movies. I don't really care how it ends because that is holding my growth back, because now I'm not in the driver's seat. Now I'm just trying to escape from oppression. And I believe that there's a time to fight and then there's a time to win, and I'm all about winning. Like, let's win. Let's just go out and win. Let's stop all the fighting and let's just focus on winning. So if you watch that movie, then you already mentally put yourself as a slave, and now you're dealing with all these issues. And I'll ask you, right, when you watch those movies, how do you feel afterwards? Are you able to separate the fact that you're watching one person's interpretation of a historical event, or does that have an impact on you in the way that you even interact with people right after you leave the movie theater? And I'll say it impacts you because I know it used to impact me. And I'll tell you another story. So my daughter, Alec, we would go visit people when they were, at the congregation, they were sick or something, and they were at the hospital. And we went to a hospital. I forget the name of it because they sort of change periodically. But it was Saint something. It had this statue in the front, and this statue was their representation, their opinion of the apostle or Jesus or an angel. And so my daughter, right after seeing these images so often, she's like, "Oh, Dad, there's Jesus." And I was like, no, no. That's someone's opinion of him, and I understand that you've seen it periodically, so that becomes what everybody's mindset is, and it's to the point that people will share, like, pictures of, like, a waffle with the certain images, like, "Oh, Jesus is in my waffle," and right, don't get me started on just how crazy that is by itself, right? Sharing pictures of food that you think looks like someone, or rocks that looks like someone, but let's just start with the fact that that's not him, right? Like, but it's been like hundreds of years where people have continually seen this image, and now everybody accepts that as it. I mean, I've been in congregations where they have these images of people on, like, the overhead projector as if that's the person. And I'm sitting there like, okay, you have a person, and I get that, you sort of feel that way. But if you died and you saw him and he didn't look like that, how would you feel? Because there's a very high probability he didn't look like that. I mean, like, super high. Like, I mean, very high. But that doesn't really matter to a lot of people because they have allowed that information to be absorbed into them on a regular basis, where they now have responded as if that is reality. And I tell you these stories not to tell you to not allow yourself to interact with the world. I simply tell you that if you're trying to rise to the challenge, you have to understand that there is a certain perception that you have been absorbing over this time, and it makes it difficult for you to get from where you are to where you want to be. And the easiest step that you can do to change your life today is to start absorbing information that helps you create the life that you're trying to create. And so, for example, right, just simply listening to this video, watching, you're able to gather some thoughts where it's changing the way that you're thinking already. And so I encourage you to listen to information of people that are either where you're trying to get to, or at least people that have done something that you respect and admire. So whether that person, you respect them because of their interactions with their faith, if you respect them because of their family life and their marriage life and how they raise their kids, if you respect them because of the career they built, or the company they've done, or the philanthropy work they do, whatever that is, you absorbing that information will now allow you to visualize yourself in that same situation. where now you're asking yourself different questions. Now you're thinking, how do I get from where I'm at to where I'm going in a more real way? And so I love reading stories about people who have achieved something that I'm trying to achieve because I learn so much from them. When I do watch TV, which I don't really watch TV at all anymore, but when I did, I used to watch Shark Tank, and I enjoyed watching just the questions that we're asking, the answers, and how well they prepared. And then I would be thinking, okay, if I'm trying to get funding for some idea, then I would need to know these questions. I would need to have answers to these questions. I would need to have this demo. I would need to have this stuff lined up. I would need to know certain information. You can see how it already is benefiting you just by watching certain information, because now you're thinking in that position. It's what our mind naturally does. We automatically are trying to put ourselves as the hero in the story, and not in a vain way. It's just that the average person, we're often thinking, how does that interact? How does that impact me? Like, how does this news impact what I'm doing? Right? Like when you're looking at the news and you're seeing something about that recession of '08, you're automatically thinking, where's my money at? Am I okay? Do I have enough time? Do I need to change that? Am I invested in that? Right? Like, and you see the other stories, maybe like Madoff, where you're like, okay, how comfortable am I with my financial advisors? Should I have a review? Should I have a second opinion done? The information that you allow yourself to take in dramatically impacts the way that you engage with the world. And so if you're chasing happiness, if you're trying to rise to the challenge, if you're trying to live that Achoja lifestyle, if you are working towards doing something, then you have to be able to allow yourself to absorb the information that puts you in the driver's seat of creating that life. And I encourage you guys to take that step. So number one is you want to look at what you're watching and see if that is helping or hurting your overall goal. If it's hurting, cut it out. That also includes people. If there's people that you're allowing the information that they say to you to negatively impact the actions that you're taking, the questions that they're asking takes you out of the driver's seat and puts you on the defense, you have to have two things. One is you may have to exclude them. You may just have to leave that situation, but at least you'd have to limit some of the information that you're sharing, because you can't continue to grow something at the same time that someone's putting bricks of doubt in the same building. It just doesn't work that way. So you definitely want to make sure that you're able to do that you want to do that for yourself. And so as you make sure that you're absorbing the right information, as you make sure you're cutting out the wrong information, you'll start being able to recognize opportunities a little bit better. Where at one point you weren't thinking anything about that, but now that you're absorbing information, now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm telling, maybe someone, and they're like, oh, I know someone who can help you with that. And then it's just kind of snowballs from there. So you just want to really allow yourself, whatever that lifestyle that you're creating, that you really put in that effort. You put the wall where you don't allow the negative things to come in, and then you also spend the time absorbing the positive things, reading books, reading articles, listening to audiobooks, whatever you have to do. You want to make sure that you're gathering that information so that you can see yourself creating the lifestyle that you're working on, and then start putting pen to paper. It says something like 90% of people do not write their goals down. And it's something that if something in your mind happens when you're able to see something, you're able to hear something, you're able to write something. And if you have the ability to do all three, it dramatically increases your chance of remembering it and for it sticking and mattering to you. So I just encourage you to take that extra step, those extra 5 minutes, to let your mind know, I'm serious about this. This means a lot to me. I'm reading it, I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it, and I'm writing it down. This matters to me. And that'll be a mindset moment. I'm always thankful for your time, guys. If you enjoy this, hey, all I'm asking for is you help me get the message out. Share it, like it, leave a comment, review, all that good stuff. I would just like to know the one thing that you are going to cut out of your life that that information is making it difficult, if not almost impossible for you to create the life that you're trying to create as you continue chasing happiness. Until next time, I'm Dre.